Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Lit versus Genre. This is Steve,
And I'm Jeff.
and we are up to chapter 43.
We
Uh,
are.
yes,
We made
so
it.
planning our journey
That's right.
into the ways.
VOAs. I mean, they
Ooh.
are talked about in a spooky way. Apparitions. I mean, what could be more timely with Halloween right around the corner?
Nice. Yep.
Yep.
Nice. We got a claw symbol. So like that's kind of apropos because we have all our white
Right.
cloaks or assorted various white garbed people hanging out outside, and
Yes.
we got to get past them. We're
Hmm.
also, I mean, this just feels like OG Wheel of Time right here to me. We got more capitalized things.
Those capitalized words, escaping ends to go to other ends.
Escaping ants in the middle of the night.
I mean, we've been here
Oh
before.
yeah.
This is we want to talk about character development and skills that have been gained. I think it's understandable how they escape this time without anyone noticing, because of their training in escapes. So yeah,
They
but
did
no,
cut
I
it a little
enjoyed
close though. I didn't
they
understand. I
did.
was like, guys, maybe give yourself like another hour or something before dawn.
No,
Like,
no,
would that have
no,
maybe been?
no.
You gotta add
Um,
that little extra tension. Oh no.
exactly, exactly. Well, I like that it comes from somebody spotting Lowell, but to talk about your capitalized words, yeah, I'm sure you felt right at home reading these like, oh, we're talking about things. We're talking about things that happened. I want to say that the longing he had talked about before, like briefly, and not like really gotten into it. But to me, I mean, of course, this is no shock, but I am a fan of this, especially that there was a divide in the White Tower about whether or not the Ogier offering sanctuary to the men who had gone crazy work. And the reason I love it is because we've seen these settings, and sure, we don't know how settings work or why they work, right? But we are at least dealing with the world ramifications of having a place where someone could not touch the true source when a huge story element of this world is about men going crazy. It's like, well, of course, why wouldn't they shelter there? And it's addressed, and it's even a point of contention. So I like that thoroughness.
Yeah. I yeah, when we
Mm,
got into this chapter, this again like is just sort of setting up the plot deviciness that we talked about like so much in our last
right,
video. How I felt
right,
like
exactly.
this was out of nowhere and a very convenient thing that they
Hmm.
suddenly
Hmm.
have. And yeah, this feels like very much like, okay, I have to now put in some groundwork into this to make sure that you are buying this all the way. And I mean, it makes for a very exposition heavy
Yep.
chapter. Um, and even as I'm reading it, I mean, I guess I appreciate because, like, as I was reading it, I was like, well, wait, how did these guys, if they go into a setting, they lose their
Right.
power, but they're also able to make a magical portal to go
Right.
wherever you want? And, like, so we have to have Egg come in here and, like, ask that question so that
Oh
just so that we could address this question. It still feels pretty clunky to me, to be perfectly honest. It still feels like
yeah.
we are really having to bend over backwards for this one. Um, but I don't know. That's just me. Again, it doesn't feel super elegant, but I guess we'll see how
I,
this thing plays out.
I'm with you on the timing, right? Like, I mean, I like the world building elements of it. I like the idea of the Aes Sedai as a thank you to the Ogier that were separated because of the breaking of the world, would then have this way to get back in touch with each other. So it feels like sort of a rational thank you for the Aes Sedai to make. Um, But I think the fact that it's all of this history is being revealed now when we need it, when we like need this portal, I'm with you on. I think it's softened by the history of like, well, if it's steeped in enough history, it can't just be a plot device, right?
Hmm.
It's got to be something that's been around. But I mean, I do hear you about like Lowell, the one guy who like has read about it, is right there. and there's one nearby, and yada yada yada. So yeah, there are a number of like pieces that can feel convenient for sure, and to set some of those up a little sooner, have her casually mention the ways previously, like I wish we could use the ways or something earlier in the narrative.
Mm-hmm.
I think would have helped this sort of moment.
Yeah, for
Mhm.
sure. The shadow. Am I right? So the shadow was there, like kind of cliffhanger. The thing he was like so worried about in the last one, but then this is not really clearly defined. I don't
Oh,
think
which
what it.
shadow is being referred to?
Well, I guess he says in the end, like what he's so kind of worried about is the
Uh-huh.
shadow or be swallowed by the shadow.
Oh, yeah, that's tough.
Dun dun dun. And then you're like,
Mm,
okay, what's the shadow?
right,
Like I actually kind of feel like this was my big draw into this next
right.
chapter, more so than I was like. To be
What's
perfectly
right?
honest, I wasn't like, please explain to me this ways thing
You
in
weren't,
like
but I sense
excruciating
that from
detail.
you. Well, we obviously had to have Lowell be the one to explain it
Well, of
because,
course,
of
naturally.
course.
But I was more like,
But
what's the shadow that's gonna kill us? Again, it's me, like, clear stakes
uh,
guy, and I hate hitting the
right,
same drum over and over again, but
yeah.
I'm like, what's the shadow? And I get, like, this whole
Mhm.
chapter, and I might have missed it. Oh, I wanna. This is
You
the
still
one
need
thing
my
I do like
herbs?
about Nynaeve. I don't like Nynaeve, but I like how obsessed she is with her herbs and how freaking
Yes,
important she thinks that her herbs are.
absolutely. The
I
team cannot function without their herbs.
I imagine
They
everybody else like rolling their eyes every time
are like,
Nynaeve
oh,
brings
no,
up
no, good
herbs.
herbs. I mean, she did treat them as children, so probably
Wheel
not
of
the case.
Time
But
show. Call me. Give me a call.
no,
I
it's
have some
no, seriously.
suggestions.
Oh, we have so much to talk about with the Wheel of Time show. But for this, just to back up quickly, I do agree with you about the shadow there. Yeah, so the shadow is supposed to be in this case Machin Shin, I want to say, which is talked about. But you're right, they don't. he,
Wait, the
he
shadow
sort
is
of does
what
everything
now? What did you just say?
but answer the question. Yeah, it's what's it? I thought it was. I feel like it's said here. Um, it's like Machin Shin, I want to say,
Oh.
is the shadow. So I agree that it's confusing because they're using shadow in sort of like two different meanings.
Oh.
Um, so yeah, it's tough. Like normally swallowed by the shadow means you like die and die of like dark causes, right? Like you're dying, like there's light versus the shadow in this story, Baalzamon representing the shadow, the evil. But in this particular case, it did seem like we're talking about a different variant on the shadow, right? Like we weren't just talking about
I
regular
don't
bad guys and
think Dark
Trollocs.
One has been. I mean, there is the light and the dark, but like somebody saying like the shadow capitalized, I don't think that happened before that point.
Oh, I think it has. Yeah, no, it's the war against the shadow is the war against the dark one.
Mm. All
Um,
right.
but there is something more specific that
And what was your
Lowell
word
was
that you're now
referring to.
saying? Mash and chin?
I'm gonna look because I mean I'm realizing like is that a has that not been stated? Is that a
I don't
spoiler?
think that's been said, but I can word search it here if you tell me how to spell it.
I'm worried about. I don't want to spoil stuff for you, but it is just a
Mm-mm.
name. Um, but
Oh, well, don't
uh,
worry, because in
I
our
mean,
last video, somebody who shall not be named dropped a major
oh
spoiler. Major spoiler.
no,
In
it
the.
did. I didn't. Oh, I missed it. No,
Yeah.
it's not in the back. It's not in the back. Oh,
Okay.
major spoiler. Darn it. But anyway, I would say let's not worry about it. I mean, all we hear you highlighted. I won't even want to say that people were afraid of the wind afterwards, right? Um, so yeah, I guess maybe what's supposed to happen here, because I'm not seeing it as I flip back through like the exact name. So it does now feel to me that like he's sort of answering the question without answering the question. He doesn't say exactly what the shadow is.
Mm-hmm.
He just says that people are afraid of having. They explain about how the ways grew dark, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the ways started to be tainted, and then people
Right.
left kind of crazy and scared of the wind. So I guess maybe yeah, that's all he's giving in this part, and I just
Right.
like totally inserted my bias, my knowledge, right?
Right.
Um, so I think yeah, that might be it, which is sort of crazy that it doesn't specifically address it. I guess it's saving for reveal, maybe. Maybe that's what's happening here. But in your eyes, I could see that being really annoying when you went into this chapter being like, okay, what's the shadow? What's the thing? And then like
Especially when that
doesn't
was the
really get
cliffhanger.
answered.
Yeah, like especially when that
Yeah.
was like the cliffhanger hook to the
Oh,
next chapter.
um,
And like so
yeah.
here's another thing I'm gonna say, and like, I'm just here to rile up people in the
Just here
comments.
to say things,
Yeah, I'm
right?
just here to light fires but and throw bombs. But like again, it feels to me like a little bit like we were talking last time about,
Mhm.
oh, Eye of the World was the title, so of course he has this planned out that the whole thing in the end is going to be about the Eye of the World, which I find faulty because I don't know at what point he decided on the title of the
Right.
novel, but B, like, I feel like he does this thing where he's and this is a trick I feel like you can do, especially when you're in more of a serialized medium. Like, this is a trick that I think comic book writers do quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you refer to something vaguely enough, you get to make it up later, man. Like, if you say we're gonna blind the eye of the world in chapter 7, you don't have to know what the hell that means. Like, you really don't. And then later on, you go, I guess it meant this. And I know for a fact I've done that sort of stuff before where I'm like, I don't really know what this means or how this works, but like, keep writing, because like the main thing you gotta do, which is the hardest thing in my opinion, is just keep writing. And then you
Keep
come up
going.
with it. So like, he can drop this. It feels very much like that, where you can go, oh, the shadow. Yeah, what's the shadow? I don't know. I'm sure it'll come to me when we get a little farther in. And it just really has that feel. Especially like if everybody was supposed to know what the Eye of the World is, which was also said in the comments. Scott said, yeah, Eye of the World is a comment. I think he said that. Oh, I hope I'm not misquoting him now, because he's gonna have my head. But I think he said in the comment, everybody knows who Eye of the World is. So it seems like when the Aiel said he wants to blind the Eye of the World, everybody should have known what that meant.
Yeah, because I mean, people were definitely asking. Because I got some stuff to say about Shadow and Much, but let's stick
Yeah.
with Eye of the World for now. Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. It was definitely said, but and we get these clues, but yeah, it doesn't. I do agree that it doesn't feel as clean of a come together hit because it doesn't seem to all quite add up. For me, it is. It doesn't seem like everyone knows what it is because people ask, what could that mean? And
Right.
sure, they could be asking about another part of the phrase, but it does seem like Eye of the World would have been talked about more.
Yeah.
It would have been more like, well, I know what Eye of the World means, but I don't get the rest. Like, how would they blind it?
Right.
Like,
Right. Right.
I would have expected, like, a Gawain or something when she hears the Tinker story to be like, oh, but they can't blind the blank. How would they do that? Like, how, like, that's what Lowell does later. He's like,
Uh,
how could he stop time? Right? And I
right.
feel like that's the first moment where like, oh, eye of the world is time,
Uh huh.
basically. Um, but it makes sense for Loldenol because he's studied, right?
Okay.
So I mean, yeah, eye of the world has been mentioned, and we find out what it means through the learned character, if you will. And obviously the information is kept from Moraine. But yeah, I mean, it doesn't feel like a satisfying, this is the thing, because I think it's weird that the bad guy is basically saying his plans,
Yeah.
right?
I mean,
Like,
in good
like sort
James
of.
Bond villain fashion.
I mean, true. I mean, so we can say this is like James Bond, that it's the villain sort of raving at these young heroes, trying to figure out who is who, and threatening them. And maybe he doesn't care that they know what he's going to do.
Mm.
Maybe he's not worried because they're so far away from it, right? Because they're traveling the blight through the waves, and he's not thinking they'll do that. Or maybe he doesn't care. Maybe he's hoping they'll come, and it's all a trap, right? So I mean, there could be reasons why Eye of the World is said. But it does, I think it gets lost in a narrative this large.
Mm.
I think it's hard for just those few tiny pieces to come together in a super satisfying way that we're all like, oh yeah, he definitely needs to change now. Like, and by them, I mean like the group needs to change and go to the eye of the world.
Right.
So I am with you in that regard, despite there being a couple little mentions.
Well, it's an interesting point that you bring up. Like, if you are like, I honestly, let me hand it to the man. I honestly can't imagine the
Right?
undertaking of making such a thing as this, and like putting all these balls in the air that he's intentionally doing. That's clearly what his real passion is just
Yeah.
making up 800 things. Because and what one of the reasons I can't imagine doing it is because nobody's brain is that big enough to then be able to take care of all this minutia at the same time. Like you're gonna have a trade-off. Like you're like, okay, you can have big sprawling crazy world that you're thinking about and having to create, but then like these things like, oh, the plot threads coming together so everything hits in the right way, that's just as much mental effort, or sometimes when I'm writing it seems more mental effort just to have these mechanics work.
Right.
So I can't imagine piling on top of that incredible
So many
mental
words.
effort,
Right.
worlds and worlds and worlds worth of stuff.
Well, it's not going to be as tight. Like it's just if it's that, I think your word choice is very good. If the narrative is going to be this sprawling, if the world is going to be that big, how can you also craft like a crazy tight narrative? I mean, it is possible. Like, don't get me wrong. I think this is why Brandon Sanderson has the success he does, is because a lot of people talk about his like Sanderlanche endings, where all kind of like builds, wills come together and like boom, and the pieces are there. Generally speaking, you can't point back and be like, oh, is that and that and that? Oh my goodness. And like that's really to me like a number of books I have felt that at the end. And I know others have because I mean they made a whole name for it, right? So I truly think that's why he's so big, because he creates interesting worlds. He does have the mechanics line up together, and even though people will complain about some of his characters not being as strong, maybe like character work isn't as good. And I don't personally feel that. I mean, maybe in certain narratives, sure, but overall, I think it's fine. But the other aspects are so strong, and he's so prolific, right? It's funny we're talking about that because I do think that is an alternate example. But yeah, I would say in something this big, and his books are big. I mean, he's got one big series. But I would say some of the books I'm thinking about that have those sort of tighter endings would be like Mistborn or Warbreaker or even like Elantris, for the most part, that feel set up throughout. Like it's touched backed on enough, even though the narrative is longer, not as long as this. I think. I mean, there might be some books that are 750, but I don't. Mistborn's pretty long. Anyway, point is that I agree with you about this narrative, and I think there are some exceptions, but overall, I would say you're right. That it's going to be a trade.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
So
Okay.
no, for sure. Real quick. So Machin Shin, I did find.
Ah,
It is in this part. It's in Lowell's explanation. It's about like 3-4 pages into chapter 43.
okay.
And it is italicized, I want to say. Yeah, it's capitalized and italicized for added effect. Of course, you got steading that's that too. So it's going to be, yeah, so not quite there, but if you
So
go
one,
in
two,
a
three.
page, and it's in a kind of a longer paragraph that starts with the ways were made by men wielding power,
Oh,
fueled by. So it's where they're explaining, yeah, right here. It's
okay.
right above your highlights. So they
Gotcha.
never laughed again. So right up there, it says, vanished, and some came out and gone mad, raving about Machin
The
Shin, the
black
black wind.
wind.
Yeah, and then later it says they are afraid of the sound of wind.
Right. But that is also
So
the shadow.
boom. Well, yeah, that's what's confusing. So I feel like Lowell's using the shadow just to mean like something evil is going to
Right,
kill
right,
you.
right, right.
But then later when Land says we can defeat the shadow, I think he's more referring to the dark one in the shadow, like taking over the world kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like Machin is just like one evil thing, but I feel like they're using shadow in two different ways there, which is confusing for sure. Like when I saw you point out both, I was like, oh, those aren't the same meaning. I don't think personally. That's confusing for a new
Super, super
reader.
interesting. All right.
Yeah,
Okay, fair. So Mach and Shin we're worried about, and
because
it's
Machin is only in the like we're
right,
hearing about it in the ways, right?
right, right.
But then Lance says save the world from the shadow. So we haven't talked about something breaking out of the ways that would then destroy the world. We talked about
Okay.
the Dark One destroying the world. You know
That
what I'm
actually
saying?
makes that
Uh,
cliffhanger like a little weaker, I feel like
mm,
in my
yeah,
opinion, because I want
he
something
could have
about what's
said.
the ways.
Well, yeah, I mean, he could have said, I don't know why I didn't say or swallowed by much and Shin,
Right,
right?
right.
But
I
I
mean, the
think at
shadow
that
is
point he
more
knew
evocative, though. If you just said like that
exactly.
random name, it doesn't really.
Right. No one's gonna know what it means. I
Yeah,
bet that's why he picked it.
yeah.
I would guarantee that he's like, what's a word for darkness, right?
Hmm.
I don't want to say the drive you crazy wind, right? Um,
The drive you crazy one.
but um, but I feel like he
Yeah, not
could have.
super menacing. The drive you crazy
I
wind.
feel like he could have said, we could all die or go mad, you know what I mean, or worse, or something like that.
Yeah.
Because like the shadow is non-specific, and really we've talked about shadow in relationship to kind of other things. Because they'll talk about like I mean, it is also true because they call it a creature of. They've talked about creatures of the shadow, like Trollocs and Fades, or creatures of the shadow.
Mm.
And so they do talk about how the Dark One's taint is what created the problems in the ways. So if Machin was created by that taint, he is a creature of the shadow. You
Please
know what I'm
never
saying?
say the
So
Dark One's taint again, Jeff. Please, I can't. I can't
I'm
deal with
just
that.
quoting. I'm just quoting. But yeah, so I mean, I think technically he's right, but I do see how that could be confusing.
All right, talking about greatest hits of the
Yeah,
past, we have
yeah,
another awkward Egg
it's the
and
best.
Rand interaction. But this
Right?
one, I didn't buy it at all.
No,
I mean, I get it's like, haha, a joke. I was talking to the queen's daughter, and you're like, don't lie to me, Rand. But it just seemed like a point in time with everything
but
that's
he wouldn't be light.
happening where he clearly would not joke at this moment, and I don't think like she would take that, like as like, oh, he's joking. Like we're all going to go into a magic portal and die. Like I don't feel like this is the moment where she would interpret this as like, oh, he's being a
Yeah,
goofball right
I do
now.
feel I agree that there's a bit of a cheat going on right here. Like, yeah, due to the seriousness of the situation, it doesn't seem like he would be that way.
Yeah.
Maybe if she was talking to Matt, right, I would buy it a little bit more,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
Matt is more of a jokester,
Sure.
where Rand isn't really.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe if she had said like Rand, you can be as bad as Matt sometimes. I don't even want to talk to you. Like maybe association or like you've been hanging out with Matt again. I don't know. But yeah, I hear you.
I
I
can
do.
see
I
her
mean, I
saying
think
like, "Don't lie to me," or
right, right,
why
right,
would you say that? That's freaking weird. We're all
right,
about to die. But like, I
right.
don't, like he's going for like the joke, and it's just like a
He's going
moment
for the
of being
levity.
out of the world, like or not in the moment.
It's a moment of levity. I mean, I do like the levity, but I mean, yeah, if I was to look at it deeper, it doesn't quite fit. That's why I say I agree. It's a cheat. It's like a little like I want this effect,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm just going to do it to get the effect,
Right.
right? But is it really earned by the circumstance? Probably not.
All right. What? Anything else about this chapter?
For me, I mean, I hear you about the exposition and exposition coming late. But for me, I thought it was a fun, planning connective tissue chapter, basically. Um, but no, I'm good on this one, I want to say.
Oh, does he have
Uh,
another dream? Oh yeah.
oh,
Okay.
wait,
Yeah.
yeah, wait, crap. Yeah, no, wait, we do have more to talk about. Because I
Yes.
was like, we should get on to the next chapter where the dream is and the ways are, and then I was like, wait a second.
Yeah, I was trying
So
to
we
remember
got we
this.
got we got dream sequence. We got dream
Right,
sequence.
right.
Let's
So
chat a little bit
we
about
have to have
this.
one more check in with our boy Balza.
Yup,
Um,
good old Big B. Yep.
yeah, I don't know if I have a lot to really say about this extra check in. He's kind of on his same old. What's the pit
He
of
is.
doom? Wait, I didn't even
Oh
highlight
yeah.
that. Let's just throw more stuff. Let's just throw more in. What?
Pit of Doom,
Just
bro.
throw more in.
Pit of Doom. Doesn't sound nice.
No, it doesn't sound nice. He's still doing his thing of trying to be like, oh, the Aes Sedai are messing with
Yeah.
you, and Rand's like, oh,
I
resist, deny him.
I wonder how many of these are gonna keep. Like really, because it does. These do often feel like it's sort of beating the same drum.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't. I do know what it's going for. It's going for the added tension, right? Like I do like the moment of Moraine being like, "We don't have time," and like she's talking more about like the Dark Ones getting closer to finding out who they are.
Hmm.
I do. I will say it's got one of my favorite like two sentences. I think,
Oh.
and maybe I don't know if it's a whole book, but like one of my favorite ideas ever, where Matt's freaking out and talking about how he could feel himself holding himself, that he could like
Mm.
feel the skin of the like little statue, but then he could
Mm.
also feel like someone was holding him at the same time.
Yeah.
And that imagery and idea was just badass to me. Like I felt that moment,
Hmm.
and I was like, that's so cool.
Oh, all right.
And I do get also Matt more freaking out, like he knows my face now, and I love the idea of him picking one of them up, and then Bell's gonna be like, "Boom, I know who you are now." I do because that felt like added tension to me.
Hmm.
But Rand is sort of getting hurt in a dream. Is kind of the same. So for me, it's Matt's dream that adds extra stakes because like now if Belsman knows their face, does that maybe do something right? Is it easier for his minions to find them or something, right? I'm not saying it does a ton because again, we sort of felt that before, but at least felt a little new to me, where he's like freaking out. He knows my face. He knows who I am.
Yeah.
So that was
I
cool.
interpret it as that he knows all three now because didn't Rand what he injured himself on was his own sword that his doll had.
You're right. Yeah, yeah, that little piece. So he might,
Yeah,
and
I
cross
took that to
elimination
be
of
like
the
he outed
bonus.
himself or whatever by
Yeah.
like
Mhm. Well,
getting
he destroys them all, but then one gets stuck in his hand while he's
right,
destroying it.
right.
So maybe it would. I don't know. But I do agree that it is sort of this kind of nameless terror, much like the wind in the last. But I mean, it gets the name obviously here. But in terms of specific stakes, it's more just general terror. It just feels like to be adding this sense of foreboding, which I like the idea behind, but I'm kind of with you that it would be nice if each of those felt more like a more specific escalation, or if more of the dreams felt like a more specific escalation.
Mm,
But there is this part of it that I do just love. So
yeah. Okay. So then we head out
we get
and
to waves time.
I I like this like super amazing like trap door into the like alley
Yeah,
that
yeah.
they
The
have. That also
huge.
felt very James
Oh,
Bond to me for some
yeah,
reason.
didn't wasn't it like Master Jill? It was like I mean Master Gill. It's like, okay, Master Gill, I see you. What else are you sneaking out
Right.
of your id on these like, side hinges?
Yeah.
So yeah, that was kind of crazy. I mean, I felt like it added this kind of cool moment of the stuff thing. Again, not really set up. Nothing about Master Gill's character made me think that he would have something like that. Maybe if he had talked about like helping Tom Marilyn escape
Right,
forever
right.
ago. Yeah, like I would if this had been like a hey Tom used this before, it could have been just a little something more to justify.
Yeah, it seems like a
I
pretty
will say
wild
within a couple
setup
of these.
just to have at your
Yeah,
end. Yeah.
yeah. So
But
I mean
okay.
it's a cool moment, but is it fully earned? And again, so we're talking about with so many balls in the air, it's kind of like, oh, this will just be cool. Let's just do it.
Right,
But
right.
maybe it needed a little bit more.
Yeah, well, I think he also it's just something to help you out of your plot that you set up that you have these
Right,
people
right.
camped out in the
People
front, so
watching.
you need a way
Yeah,
out the back. This
right.
seemed like a really elaborate way out the back, though. It probably didn't need to be like
It does. Like I'm
that
surprised
elaborate.
they didn't just use like Lamgun or somebody or one of the guards to like chase away the white coats or like,
Right, you could do something
do
like
something that would
that. Yeah.
distract or have her use a magic thing, I don't know. It does seem sort of I guess she and I guess Moraine and Master Gill had already talked that he had this cool like back door. I don't know. So yeah, no, it's a little yeah. I mean it's described well and it's fun. But yeah, it does feel like just sort of a fix.
Yeah. Okay, so they go.
Hmm. Hmm.
Daylight is coming. I thought
Right.
there was a couple kind of janky sentences here.
Mm,
Half again as
and
tall as any man should be. Shouldn't it be like twice as tall as any man should be?
one thing he's saying half again, so he's like 1.5 times the size.
Oh, half again means one and a half?
Yeah,
Oh,
because you're
okay.
you're going like half again beyond the regular height.
Oh, okay. That is an interesting way of phrasing it.
But
I do not
well, I
believe they would
liked.
phrase it that way on the GRE, but okay, let's
Well,
keep
wait, but
going.
I feel there's some good setup before that where
Mm.
it's like Lowell by himself looks fine, but it's the fact you got other people around him that
Oh,
messes it up.
yeah.
Because like by himself, you're like, oh, he just looks like a tall man leading like a horse, right? Or like a tall man leading a horse, or an ordinary man leading another size horse, right? But then in perspective, it's like way off. So I feel like there is this nice job of explaining how people could have seen him, but then how they're actually seeing him because of this. So
Right. All right.
yeah,
I still think they could have left a little bit earlier, but they make it. They make it
they
here
want it, they make it.
to where they're
Yep.
going. They go
They
down.
get into this trap door that's got like this ramp that horses can fit down. It's huge.
This
It's
felt
been
very
unopened.
Matrixy to me, where they where they go into the mirror. I
Oh,
wonder,
in the
like,
mirror, yeah.
I'm kind of interested, like, who all read these things, who all were into these things,
A lot of
when they were
people.
making it.
Yeah,
Did the Wachowskis
yeah.
read this and go like, "Oh, we're snatching that mirror thing. We're doing it."
Right. Oh, I mean, I think Alice is the first one I
Alice,
remember going
yeah,
into
through
a
a looking
mirror,
glass.
right?
It is very through a looking
Exactly.
glass.
But I like the way it was described, where he talked about how, like, I feel like what Jordan does a good job of is he will take things that are standard, but he'll put his own little twist on them. Even if it's small, like here, how he talks about how the ways used to look like a mirror, but due to the taint is now, shadowed. And it already creates that additional sense of foreboding of like, where are we going into because of this?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
cool. We also like call back to this tree, which I
Yeah.
still have
Yep.
no idea what the big deal is with that tree. I have no idea what that battle is about. I have no idea.
Right.
What
We do get the picture at the start of the chapter though to help us.
Wait, oh, was that a tree picture?
Yeah, yeah, that's the leaf picture right at the
Oh,
start.
okay, okay.
Oh wait,
I don't know if
I
I
think you went.
will learn about
Yeah,
this tree by the end of this
yeah,
book.
yeah.
Probably not. I'm guessing.
Well, I mean, it was like we said, it was talked about in that war and stuff, and like the tree and all that.
Yeah, I mean, but like I'm like no idea why. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Or maybe it matters crucially, but I'm not supposed to know at this
It
point.
doesn't matter in this moment. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think we're okay.
So we go in. It's super dark in here, and then the
Hmm.
thing like ends up kind of feeling to me like it's just like a really dark and murky MC Escher painting. Am I like crazy to think about it that way?
Accurate. I'd say accurate. Accurate. I think that's good.
Okay.
This
But
was maybe
this I couldn't
more
take though. There
platforms than
was like,
staircases.
oh, sorry, what'd you say?
No, I was saying, but maybe more platforms and staircases. But
More,
yeah, no, I think you've hit the nail on the head.
yeah, because he talks about like going up a big ramp, and he's like, "There's no
Yep,
way we were right above, right where we were, or whatever." It's
exactly,
making me feel
exactly.
very MC Escher. But this I couldn't take. Like, wait, there's just a white line that we follow. It's like, oh look, here's this helpful. I mean, I guess if you were making just a
They did
pathway
make
to
it for them.
places, you're like,
Yeah,
it's like a Disney World where there's just like little
yeah,
arrows on the ground that tell you where to go to your
yeah,
next thing.
exactly. Well, and then it's got those guideposts, right? Just like you're at Disney, and it tells you where to go
Right.
next.
Yeah, you are
But
here.
exactly, that
Please
is
in the show.
100%.
Please in the show. But you are
Dude, you
here.
are here on the thing. Dude, even if they did, only Lowell could read it. So I mean, it wouldn't
Right,
matter.
right, right. It'll be the ultimate
Uh,
Easter egg because you'll have to know Lowell's language.
yeah, you got to know Ogier. But yeah, so I mean that's why to me it's okay because it was meant from that. Like that's why there's guiding stones to show
Hmm.
like Ogier where to go to get to their friends. Um, and I do like we're seeing this thing that's been destroyed. It feels very like post-apocalyptic or like zombie, where right that everything is like acid drenched and pockmarked and dark. I like the idea that the dark's like pushing in on the light. So I feel it's very atmospheric, and I think again that's why Jordan get away with this stuff. Like, are the ways like the best plot device in this moment to drastically change where we're going and leap us to the blight?
Hmm.
Well, probably not. But at least things are described in a fun way that are atmospheric, that we can feel, and we get a lot of history on the back end, so it feels like it's always been there. Maybe even if it is sort of just shoved in last minute. But I feel like the fact that he describes in a way that's interesting and engaging let us get immersed in that as opposed to something else not feeling as clean as it could. And I think it's that constant trait. Well, I mean, we talked about traits before, but like I should really say more strengths and weaknesses of certain writers or certain parts of a story. And as long as you don't need all the strengths, but as long as you got a decent number of them,
Hmm.
it's still enjoyable to read.
Yeah, right on. I agree. Uh, so
Yeah.
again, just cliffhanger. I
Oh,
feel like
we're
this
in
is
cliffhangers like every time now. Yeah.
yeah, like every chapter, even if they're like
Hmm.
kind of
Hmm.
slight, like oh no, there's a
Yeah.
gap in the bridge. How are we gonna get across? But
Right.
like him like swallowing hard, and it's just like
Hmm.
boom. And
Yeah.
I kind of feel like this is the new way now. This is how these
Yeah.
chapters are gonna go. He's like onto this. Like okay, now I'm
Right.
about hooking him every time.
Despite, which is interesting because it's the end of the book, but I think the pacing is much stronger
Mm,
in these later chapters. I mean, sure, we had the big exposition about the ways, right?
mm,
But for me, like, it felt like he was telling like this ghost story or something because he had said we'll be eaten by the shadow, and then he's explaining why. So, I was, eating popcorn while I'm reading. It's great. But I think even if we, say sure that part was a little slower overall, I think it's been relatively faster of like making the plan, getting there, escaping, getting to the place, getting in the ways, problem in the ways. Are you feeling that, or is it feeling as drug out to you as some, maybe the middle of the book?
No, like I
What do you
said,
think?
I think I'm on record last video
Hmm.
for how much I complained about it seemed like a sudden hard left turn and a new
Right,
crazy plot device that I'm happy that I feel like their stakes like stopping time
right,
seems like exciting to me. I
yeah,
like have something to grasp onto there. I'm
yeah,
happy that we have that narrative thrust, that we have a goal, that
hmm,
like
right,
yeah, I like all this a lot better. Like, kind of seeming since we got the gang back together after my
mhm.
total low point of hanging out with the queen, where I was like, really like,
Yeah,
I don't know why we're hanging out with the queen
yeah,
at
right,
all.
right.
And even with this sudden
It's
change
so
of
we could
like,
have that
what was the
egg
deal?
moment,
Who cares about Logain? Like, why was that in there? Like, all of
right?
that is mystifying to me. Obviously set up for a later book, but still just kind of wild that you like put it in one book,
Yeah,
and I don't know if it's going to be important. I'm guessing not. We're kind of down to 100 pages left.
yeah, we got exactly 100, whereas where we're at on 45. Well, I mean, we're at 650, book ends at 750, so
Mhm.
at least in my copy, for chapter 45, that kicks us off. Um, but yeah, or wait, are we on chapter? No, wait, I'm lying. Are we on 46?
Oh, the next chapter will be 45.
Yeah, yeah. So it is 45. Yeah, 45. Yeah, that's page 650 on. So yeah, we're exactly 100 pages. Um, and so yeah, no, I think it's ventured much more in traditional territory here. And again, I'm not saying traditional bad, but like classic stakes. We know where we're going. We're going to defeat the bad guys. Why us? We're still going to do it. Who cares? I mean, there was a lot of that we didn't really talk about in the last chapter, which was about them saying why like Nynaeve saying why would we do this? This sounds like suicide, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then Moraine's speech about the pattern and 3 points and chance and all that and justification. Which again, I would guess that a lot of those reasons, just like the ways, weren't super compelling to you.
Mm-hmm.
But despite that, you're glad that this is the direction the story is going in.
Yeah, I feel much
Yeah,
more engaged now because the stakes are
right,
set and we have a goal. We're
right,
not just kind of wandering around meeting,
right. Precisely.
random hippies who
Right.
like live under
Oh,
a
the hippies.
tree, like
Oh, the best, the best. And to answer your question
i.e.
of
your
why,
favorite part. I'm glad we're not
exactly,
doing that
100%,
anymore.
100%. The whole reason we met the Queen was obviously to have that little exchange between Rand and Egwene that we talked about who is Elaine right there. That's the reason.
Pay
It is fascinating to
off.
think about. No, that was a fail. It is fascinating to see how those other aspects could matter in this book. But as you are saying, as a reader, we're traveling like through teleport system through to the Blights in the Massive North. It seems probably like, no, we're not going to see those characters again.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it's going to be interesting to address that at the end of the book to see what was finished, if you will, in this story, and what are all like sort of the remaining threads and how we feel about those.
Yeah. Let's
Yeah.
talk. Last thing I want to talk about. Let's talk about
Yeah.
TV
Okay.
show again.
Okay.
Because, like,
I
as
mean,
I was
there's
reading this part specifically, I
right.
don't know why in this part specifically, I was almost like, this is too magic-y magic.
Oh,
for the show. But I mean, maybe not. Maybe I actually kind of
you
reflecting on
mean
it
for them to
now. I
show
mean,
in
they're just walking around in
darkness?
some dark place. But like, I
Yeah, I
feel
think it'll be
like
pretty cinematic
it
because
would
you'll
be
only see them in the bubble of light kind of thing.
it would be pretty cinematic. Yeah, and I guess maybe like this. Maybe like in my mind, I draw a hard line between like I would consider like a lot of magic being like Harry Potter level magic. Like I could see that happening in a Harry Potter movie. Do I see that happening in like the television show? I mean, I guess it has to. But again, like I would be sitting here thinking there's a more elegant way to have done all this period. And then like the other thing when I was looking for an image for Waygates from last week's video, I just saw some speculation that those like that these big structures were like the Waygate things.
Mhm.
Now, after actually having read what the Waygate looks like, at least in this town, what it looks like, I'm like those things are not the Waygates. I don't know why people like were
Right,
saying
right.
that online.
Uh,
But
they
like
might do that, and then just like the middle is all CGI'd or something with the leaves, maybe. I mean,
right, right.
so
Yeah, maybe. And like those
or it
things
could
are
just be
like big and
ruins.
outside, whereas like this is inside. But
Right.
again, I don't know like how much they're gonna change, and I'm feeling like a
They
lot.
may not do. I don't think they're going to do an underside cellar. I could see them doing it as some like mound outside of town or something.
Right,
I mean,
right.
but then the whole thing is that there's Trollocs outside of town. But I think they'll just make the argument of something like, "Oh, this grove is right outside the gate. We can get to that before the Trollocs get to us."
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
I
yeah.
feel like they're going to do something like that. But
Yeah, it so that
in
those
terms
things
of the
might be the
inside,
Waygate then, but I was
maybe.
even kind of just feeling like yeah, this just felt well, yeah, because it feels like Alice through the looking glass even in the feel of it of how like unreal it is and how
Yeah.
it really does seem to go over into magic in a bigger way than Moraine calling down
Yeah,
lightning and like
for sure.
shooting some chalks and stuff like that. And I was like, oh man, are they going like it is so far beyond what Game of Thrones would do. um and like I'm like, are they going to embrace it that much, and is the audience gonna come along with like this level of
I how do I say this without spoilers? I hear you. Yeah, yeah. I mean, this. I mean, what I love about this series is that there is so much
yeah.
magic, and this is just. I'm gonna say it. It's not. I don't think it's a huge spoiler, but this is not the only otherworldly place that we ever go.
Gotcha.
So I don't. I feel
So
like
you
they're gonna have to
gotta do
embrace it
it
at
because you gotta do those
some
other ones.
points. Exactly. Like I don't see how they can't do some of the others. So, but
Wow. All right.
we'll see. We'll see. But again, I don't think shooting this will be as crazy. Like again, we'll make the next video about the GQ
Yeah,
article and
no,
everything. Like
it wasn't. It
they
wasn't
talk about
about like I thought they couldn't pull it off. It was
oh,
about
okay,
like
too
just kind of
magic-y with the
aesthetic wise and like
mhm.
how they're anticipating how the TV audience will
Right.
go for it
Will
and
they back away from it?
exactly like
Yeah.
how magic-y magic does this series get, because like again honestly right now like I know you've told me a lot, oh what I like about this series is so much more magic. I haven't really super
Right now,
felt
there's like
that.
nothing.
Yeah,
Right. Of
like
course.
there's
Yeah.
been like lightning
For sure.
bolts and there's been Moraine grew really big and there's been like a
Right.
whirlpool. And all I'm like,
It's
yeah, that's
yeah.
totally
The the magic has been way more like magical creatures, I would say, in this for like Trollocs or
yeah,
Fades
yeah,
or
yeah.
even or other races like Lowell kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I'm with you. The first one is easing. So I think in some good ways it's easing the reader into the magic.
Mm,
So I think that may help it. I mean, there's definitely like Harry Potter was very popular, tons of magic in that, right?
yeah.
Um,
But then again
Magicians is a TV show did pretty well.
the tone's totally different in that. I mean, the fact that that's like a
Yeah,
lighter and like children's kind of thing, I think like you expect
yeah,
that level
yeah.
of
I mean,
magic, and there might be like a disconnect still in some people's minds of having the
Yeah.
magic go this big, but having that I'm gonna be very serious
Mhm.
about it. Maybe kind of the same
Let's
disconnect
see.
I have about like grim and gritty superheroes, where I'm like, how are you doing this tone exactly when like my brain's supposed to
Mm,
buy, superheroes,
yeah.
but it's so much easier to buy when it's fun. Like
Yeah, I mean, it's true. I mean, I think Boys season one pulled off the gritty superhero thing, but I hear you that it does feel, I don't know, trickier or not the norm. Well, I mean, I'd say that Invincible pulled it off pretty well too. I mean, yeah, and I hear you. I would say Magicians has been a darker theme show, that it's got a lot of magic in
mm,
it. That I think it's done decently well. It's not like the next Game of Thrones like they're wanting for this show,
mm,
obviously. But I do think too, it's an interesting point. I'm going to be very eager to track it. I will keep an eye on it because I'm glad you brought it up because it's not something I thought about as someone who loves magic, right?
mm,
But obviously they are trying to get everybody to watch the show like the Game of Thrones, and I would say that is a harder ask. Like I think Game of Thrones is much more appealing to the vast majority of people
mm.
as opposed to this. Um, but we'll see what they can pull off, right?
Yeah, we will see. All right, any last thoughts
Yeah.
on this one, Jeff?
No, I'm good. I'm good. Excited for our final 100 pages. I think we're at especially with the show coming out so soon. Like it's just, and I sort of feel the end. It's the fact we're doing this in tandem with the show makes me really, really happy. So I'm super eager to do our next recording about show stuff and then our next recording about our next chapter. So I'm good. Let's go.
Yeah, everybody look for that soon. We're gonna do like another clip, and we are going to
Mhm.
talk about a very interesting article. Jeff,
Super interesting
yeah,
article.
I'm excited to talk to you about it
Crazy interesting.
because I think
Yeah.
it has like a lot of it does address a lot of your like kind of exact concerns, and
Oh,
even
there is so
comments
much
on
for
the
us to talk
length.
about.
So I think it's
Uh,
funny.
there's so much for us to talk about with that. I'm excited for all this. I'm very pumped. Just even if the show is a dumpster, right? Like just this moment in time where I'm super excited for the show coming and we're finishing this book. Like it's really fun. I'm glad we're doing all this, and I hope others are enjoying this ride with us as much as we are.
All right, thanks everybody. We will see you in that next one.
See you then.